Great. So thank you so much for joining this afternoon. My name is Soumya. I'm the creator and moderator of Buildupwomen. So for those of you who are new to Buildupwomen series, I will be moderating conversation for the first hour, and in the last 30 minutes, I would like to welcome anyone who's joining the conversation to ask our speakers any questions or share your experiences by clicking on the Q&A box at the very bottom of your screen. I'm really excited to kind of start this up. And of course, kind of before we continue the conversation, I just want to say that we come together and I want to acknowledge that I am joining from Ottawa, and that's an unceded territory of Algonquin Anishinaabe people. And as part of Canada's history and ongoing work towards reconciliation, I want to acknowledge Canada's First Nations, Inuit, Métis peoples, their histories and contributions throughout Canada as well. And of course, thank you to our partner, Startup Canada. So conversations around education has been around for a while. Well, now during the pandemic, they've been around for a while now, and it's been happening on so many different levels and different variations. But have, I guess, kids and young adults really been included in these conversations? That's the big question, right? So I want to, of course, welcome four incredible women who have been braving this conversation and has said yes to what is going to be a very honest discussion as well. So please welcome Beatrix, who is going into grade 7. We have Elysia, who's going into grade 10. Lydia, who's a second-year student, who will be a second-year student at Ottawa U. And of course, Caitlin, who will be a second-year student at U of T. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having us.
Of course. So I wanted to just do a quick check-in with all of you. How has your summer been in isolation? What has been a high and a low for you? Lydia, if you want to kind of kickstart this for us.
Yeah, no problem. I think I could definitely say it was a weird summer for me, especially being in isolation. I've always been one to travel during summer, go explore around Ottawa or even Quebec and just its surroundings, and just being home and being stuck within 4 walls has been very, how can I say, it's been a little bit suffocating, I'm not gonna lie. As a teen myself, having to celebrate a birthday but also miss out on my friends' birthdays and not be able to engage socially with those around me was kind of weird. So it's been weird, I shall say, but it's also been a time of learning and of development and of time of thinking, so I'm forever grateful for it.
Awesome, thanks for, yeah, I can totally relate to the 4 walls and not being able to celebrate with others. Yeah, I totally get it. Thanks so much for sharing that. Elise?
Yes, for me it was pretty weird because it really was not like the other summers. Like I was really bored, but a low was really when I had to start doing like online school. Like online school really isn't for me. It was pretty hard because like there was really like a lack of motivation. So yeah, it was really different compared to other summers because I was always out with my friends doing things.
Yeah, I've always kind of wondered about that because things kind of went into a state of emergency when school was still running. So it's interesting to kind of hear that angle, the fact that you had to transition so quickly to online school, and just hear about, you know, your struggles transitioning so quickly. So thanks for sharing that. Caitlin?
Yeah, it has definitely been a strange past few months. For me, I remember it was really funny because, as you mentioned, transitioning quickly. I remember the university was super adamant on not moving online, and then it was really funny because the very next day they suddenly announced, "Okay, we're moving online." It was really humorous to me because they were so adamant that they weren't moving online. They insisted. They sent out this email blast that they were like, "We are not moving online." I repeat, we're not moving online, and then they completely switched and flip-flopped the next day. I would say a high though, if there's anything, I guess, to be gained or somewhat of a high point of this past few months in quarantine was the increased time with my family, because all of us are indoors. We were just seeing each other a lot, and my family does get along, thank goodness. So I feel like I've been able to get a lot more time with them. Like I just talk to them a lot more. You know, when I'm not doing work, I just hang out with them downstairs in like the dining room. So like it's just like it's a lot more casual, and I get to talk to them a lot more. So I think that was kind of nice. And I feel like having everything move online, it kind of almost forced people, I guess, in a way, to be more innovative and creative with the way they delivered programming. So I feel like maybe that could be a little bit more interesting, or also maybe bringing to the forefront like some of the accessibility barriers that people face on a regular basis even before COVID-19, but now because everything's online, I think people are starting to pay a little bit more attention. So I think that maybe that's like a minorly good thing, if anything. I think the lows is that ironically, it seemed to be a little bit more of a busier time for me. I don't know, for me being the executive director of Light, you would think that like, oh, okay, because of the quarantine, you're going to scale back on programming a little bit. But it almost felt like there was like an increased demand to do more during this time, because there were so many things that needed help and needed like service, right? Like tutoring programs, like online programming, like supports, like mental health supports. And like there were so many areas of need that you wanted to do it all. So I felt like that was a little bit stressful for me. And I felt really anxious about all the work that I wanted to do, but also like my own stress being during this time. So it was hard to reconcile that.
Yeah, I mean, thanks so much for bringing up that point, is the fact that not only do you have to cope with transitioning, but you're also delivering other kind of support systems to the community, right? So it is definitely overwhelming. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that kind of piece with us. Beatrix, last.
Yeah, so I definitely agree with like what Caitlin said about, seeing your family more and stuff, because, when you're at school for like 6 hours a day, you don't really get to see people other than like the people in your class and stuff. So yeah, definitely the good things were seeing like family, and also just having more time to like do stuff that I didn't do before when I didn't really have the time. But yeah, definitely online school was really hard, because like I'm like pretty social, so going from seeing like a big group of people every day to seeing like 2 people every day, it was really hard.
Right. I mean, yeah, thanks so much for bringing that. I guess that's the other thing too, is kind of how resilient all of you are in terms of transitioning, but also the most important thing is kind of setting your mind to what is happening. It's a whole new ball game, right? Our new reality. So thanks so much. So I wanted to ask you, like, what was the one thing that you liked about being in isolation? I mean, some of you kind of pointed out a few things in terms of spending time with family. So what was the one thing that you really liked about being in isolation, and what did you really miss out on, or you feel like you're missing out on after having been in isolation? Beatrix?
Yeah, something I liked is more just having more time, to do stuff that I maybe didn't have time for or didn't make time for. Now it's kind of like I'm forced to make time for it. But obviously the big thing that I don't think anybody liked is not being able to see people, not being able to go to things that, a lot of people just enjoyed, and not being able to be around people that maybe you wanted to be around.
Yeah. I think that social aspect definitely none of us were really prepared for in terms of what was to come. So thanks, Caitlin.
Yeah, I definitely relate to what Beatrix said in terms of like having more time, I guess, to recoup individually and kind of to self-reflect. I think that was kind of nice, just being by yourself for a bit. I think it was nice for the first few months, then I started getting lonely after a while. So I definitely started to connect with some people online. I'd say the things that I miss the most would probably be like not only hanging out with friends, but I think also just like seeing people. Like you look out on the streets and you don't see many people anymore, or even when you have to go out and do like some emergency errand, there's nobody around anymore, right? So it feels like a little strange to see your town, which is so populous, have very few people around. I also miss just going downtown and just walking around. Like that was a large part of like, I guess, my university experience for me, just like walking to and from classes, or just walking on the streets of Toronto, which I personally really enjoyed, or even like really trivial things like walking in the supermarket. I don't know. I enjoy that stuff like that, but because of social distancing, you can't do those things. So I think that's something that I miss. And also, this is something personally because I debate competitively, but debating in person is so much better than debating online. So that is something that I miss a lot, and I'm hoping that eventually we'll be able to transition back to in-person tournaments.
It's really interesting that you bring up is just like the simple things that we do on a regular basis, or used to do. We do now, but beforehand, it's been, we do kind of take it for granted, right? It's just the littlest things that, walking down the street or going downtown. Before we're like, yeah, I'm just gonna walk down the street, but now you're like, all of these things that you have to think about, and also how individuals' personalities may have been affected because of what's happening now, right? So yeah, that was a good point that you brought up. Thanks so much. Lydia.
I think one of the things I appreciated the most about being locked down in my house was I finally had the time to unwind. I think when you're really engaged in your community and you're busy with school, you forget to take time and just like take a breather and relax. And I think it forced me to do that since everything was forcibly put to a stop. And I think it's something that I should reflect on more often because you don't realize how much of an impact it does have on you, not only physically, but also mentally. So that was the one thing I truly appreciated about it. But one thing that I did miss, however, was a bit like Caitlin, just walking to class every day or walking downtown. Like you don't realize how much of a routine it becomes to you until you get it like taken away from you. And I think it also gave me like a sense of freedom. It's like no one's watching over you 24/7. You're not stuck, and just being able to walk and breathe and do things by yourself, like going to the supermarket, so simple. It's kind of like a privilege that got to like taken away from you. And I think it makes you take into consideration to really take in the little things in life. Yeah.
Awesome. How about you, Elise?
So I think the thing that I liked the most about the isolation was really, like everyone else said, like taking time for myself, like, and like it really, yeah, like it was really like refreshing. The thing I missed the most was really like talking to people, like I'm just honestly, I like having like a schedule and everything, so I miss that. But yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like a lot of you kind of mentioned it in different variations in terms of your routine or like your structure, and and now with everything kind of transitioned so quickly, you have to adapt to, I guess, the new norm now. So how did you spend your time? Is there any kind of hobbies or kind of any interests that beforehand, when none of us, didn't really have too much time to do that self-reflection, to be mindful of ourselves and to kind of put ourselves, like, is there any interests or any hobbies that you have taken up during this time of isolation? Lydia or anyone?
A hobby that I've tried taking up once before, but I never was able to, is I started learning the guitar again. Quarantine forcibly left me alone at 4 in the morning on YouTube trying to figure things out by myself. But it was a great way to just reconnect with my artistic side, like writing, singing, playing musical instruments. So that was one thing that I really enjoyed about it.
Very cool. That's awesome. That's awesome. So you play quite often, I'm assuming now, since you're kind of taking it up. Yeah, nice. Beatrix?
I've been trying to just like, especially at the very start, just go outside more. Even just like sitting outside for like half an hour or an hour, it's just nice. And before, when it was winter, before quarantine and stuff, but it's just nice to sit outside or go for a walk or something. Yeah, it just, is refreshing to get out of the house, and even just sitting in your backyard, it just feels nice.
Yeah, it's the littlest things, eh? That's awesome. Thanks so much. So I do want to kind of take everyone back a little bit to when COVID first hit back in March. That's so odd to say. Yeah, so I heard that, the province was in a state of emergency and all of the rules and regulations have been put in place for physical and social distancing. What were your, what went through your mind? Like because originally they were just like, it's just going to be 2 weeks. It's just going to be 2 weeks. And then the 2 weeks kind of turned into a month and then it just kept piling on, right? So what went through your mind when it kind of initially, when you kind of heard about what was happening? So Elise, actually, we'll start with you.
Okay, I was kind of shocked because like in the beginning it was really just like, oh, like there's a new virus, but then like the whole world just like shut down. So I was just like, oh wow, like it's that serious. Like, and yeah, I was pretty much shocked, honestly, about the whole thing.
Yeah. What about you, Caitlin?
I think, yeah, it was really sudden because at first I think you only heard about cases overseas and internationally. So sometimes, there have been like viruses in the past, right? And they are all to varying degrees of, I guess, seriousness. So I think at first I thought this was going to be something that was going to only become, I think, like an epidemic, not like a pandemic. So like an epidemic is more like regionalized because I wasn't thinking it was going to completely infect the entire world. And then I remember hearing about the fact that, it was affecting the whole entire world and we were all being put into lockdown. And I was like, wow, this is like really strange. And at first I thought it was going to be over like after a few months. Cause I remember the initial call was that, okay, we're going to move online for a bit. And then maybe in May and June, we're going to come back. So I was thinking, okay, it's just going to be like a temporary kind of shift. But then it kind of became a permanent shift and it just kind of kept lasting. So I just think I never thought that it was going to last this long. But I think at first, I think my first thought was just like, I didn't think people should panic so much because I think that when you panic, then that leads to like hysteria and like irrationality. So I remember at my college, I was like passing through one of the common rooms and some of my friends were literally like, Caitlin, we're going to die. And I'm like, okay, I'm like, it's pretty bad. Yes, this pandemic is bad, but I'm like, I think we need to take a step back and like just listen to public health officials, follow what they're saying, and just just take a breather because I'm like, otherwise you're gonna like hurt yourself or like damage your own well-being by like panicking about this. Because I saw a lot of my friends like start really freaking out about it, and it really affected like anxiety, their mental health, and well-being. So I think that was kind of like there's a lot of thoughts going through my head, but I think those were like kind of my initial sentiments.
Yeah, I think it was a lot of individuals went through kind of survival mindset. So as you addressed that, you spoke about kind of the panic. So that's really interesting that you kind of saw that kind of unravel in front of you. But thanks for sharing that. Beatrix?
Yeah, so like everyone said, I don't think anybody expected it to be like this big thing that's been lasting for like 5 months or something. Like, I think everyone just kind of thought it would be the 2 weeks or a month and then everyone would go back to normal life. And still now, we don't know if we'll ever, go back to what it was in like January and February and like the start of March. But yeah, it's just been like really strange and everyone's just been acting different and living differently. And it's just really weird. And it was just all a huge, like it almost happened just overnight. Like,
yeah, it's almost like I guess I think the one thing I was talking to someone about is the fact that it happened during kind of transitioning into the summertime, because had it happened during winter, I mean, I think there'll be, so obviously there'll be another kind of level of kind of concerns, so yeah, thanks for sharing that. Lydia.
Well, at first I didn't think much of it because I was in class and I had this pharmaceutical drug class and my teacher's like, yeah, just be fine. It'll just be an epidemic where it's okay. Like we can relax. And then toilet paper started going out of stock.
I remember that, yes.
On survival mode. And then I remember that for a couple of weeks, people would just consume this news. The number of cases are going up and then it just took a big toll. So my first thought was really to just like stop and think and breathe, because if we all overreact and panic, it's not going to help anything, right? And we need to establish like the best measures to take in order to remain safe. So I think that was my first thought, to just like slow down and think, because like when a situation happens, like humans have tendencies to just attack what's going on in front of them, but we just forget to take the step back. And I think that was what I prioritized for myself and for my family, because they kept watching the news 24/7. I think the radio stayed on for weeks in my house, like weeks on
It
end.
became like the weather network, but of COVID, what was happening. That's
Exactly.
really interesting. I do remember that toilet paper kind of issue way in the beginning. It was like, what is happening? Where is all the toilet paper going? So yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for kind of sharing your different insights. It's really good to kind of hear things on a personal level, and kind of what you felt, but also kind of see what has happened in front of you. So were you all kind of staying with family when this happened, or were you on your own, or what was the situation in the beginning? I guess Caitlin.
Yeah, I was downtown in my dorm studying at university at U of T. So I was not with my family, although my family just lives up in York Region, which is not too far from Toronto. So I think for me, when I was kicked out of residence, I just had to move home. So it was pretty quick actually, because I think from the point that it was announced that everything was kind of shutting down, the university closed pretty quickly, and then they subsequently kicked us out of residence also pretty quickly. So I think it was within the week after announcing, I think it was like on March 19th, they announced that they were moving online. And then by the next Wednesday, I was back home in Richmond Hill. So
Oh,
it was a really fast turnover.
yeah. Okay. How about like the rest of you? Were you at home with family or on your own, or Lydia?
I was at home with my family because I always stay in Ottawa for school.
Right.
I like to prefer staying closer to where I feel comfortable. So it was not much of a big change, but I do have to say I've never seen my grandma so much over the last few months, because our schedules always mix and match. So by the time she would come home, I'd be leaving for school. So that was pretty much it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just wanted to kind of bring this forward. I know one of obviously the biggest concerns, a lot of you kind of addressed this during isolation, was about the mental health of kids and young adults. How are they going to be kind of coping with all of this as this kind of unravels in front of them? How are their parents going to support them? How is the school going to support them? Or are they supporting them? So as this is happening, I mean, how have you been coping with your mental health, and how is your mental health now kind of compared to where it was before all this started? Lydia?
Yeah, I could say before was a little bit rocky. I'm not gonna lie, school took a really big toll on me. So I think having to put everything to a stop kind of did help me. But I'm also a part of a foundation that me and my aunt created about mental health. So I had to prioritize my mental health forcibly in order to help other people get the help they need. And one of the things we're always working on is how can we, as individuals, help people get the mental health services they need during COVID. And I think I used acupuncture as a way to relieve stress and anxiety. That was preferably to me, but like, how can we help others now that those resources are not accessible? So it's like trying to find other things and trying not to burn yourself out, but also help everyone around you. So because of that, we found ways to get professionals online to Skype you or Zoom or anything you may use, just to make sure you're okay, because sometimes you just need someone else to talk to, and it might not be someone in your house. It just might be a professional.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that. I think that's kind of the one of the biggest things is that just naturally we always tend to put ourselves last on the list of priorities when it comes to mental health and whatnot. So yeah, thanks so much for forcing yourself into kind of checking in on your mental health there. Elise?
Um, it was like up and down because it was like the teachers, like for online school, the teachers were like like really relaxed because they knew that like it was like they had to deal with their own things too at home, so they were really like relaxed about it, like, oh, you need a little more time to finish that, but like you still have like Google Meet, so it's like Zoom, but like it's just, yeah. So, but I'm a person that sleeps a lot, so it'd be like, oh, you have to wake up at 11 because like, and it was just like, but I mean, yeah, it was okay. It was okay.
Yeah, so how would you say your mental health is now kind of compared to like initially when you kind of transitioned to school online and stuff?
It's good. It's good. It's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cause yeah.
Sorry, you're saying because something.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah. I found like I got like I'm sorry. Like I found things to do like hobbies and like since we can go out now, I went to see friends. So I'm good now.
Good, good. Caitlin.
Yeah, for me, I think the way I've always like dealt with my mental health is that like for me I use religion a lot because I'm Christian, so I feel like for me my faith really helps with me managing my stresses and the things that I worry about. So that's kind of how I think dealt with the university transition because I was in kind of anticipating, like Lydia mentioned, that university is a really different kind of environment than high school was. So I was expecting that it was going to be unexpected. It was going to be strange. It was going to be a little bit lonesome living downtown. So I think for my faith really helped me through that. Although I will say that during like COVID-19 specifically, I think it was kind of like mental health. I think I would say two things about it was firstly, I think I was struggling a lot with burnout because as I mentioned, there was a lot of work to be done. And I do like to do a lot of work. Like that is just something people know about me. Like I once said in an interview, I thrive under pressure, and it confused the interviewers. It's because I just like piling on more and more work. But I think I started to feel like the limits of that in quarantine. So I remember the co-founder and I of Young Ontarians United, we realized that we were getting burnt out. We started getting really tired, like to the point where we were just like, we don't know if we can continue doing this work. It was becoming unsustainable. So we actually did have to like take a break. So we scheduled time off, like we were going to stagger our time off so that somebody would always be working on the project. But it was important that we actually did take the time off. And then I like completely was able to log off for a week where I didn't have to think about like checking emails or like responding to people or doing anything because I thought that was really important. But secondly, I would say about mental health was that it was also for me, it was difficult to see my friends have to deal with mental health issues that they haven't had to before, because I think it's really hard for people that are all of a sudden dealing with mental health challenges now who have not previously had to deal with them, because it's like, well, where do you get resources? Like, I don't think the like average teenager knows where to get mental health resources if they need to. And then on top of that, there's a pandemic. So I'm sure that those resources are facing like a higher demand than previously. And it was also difficult because I couldn't be there for them, right? Like, I think that had I been able to like sit beside them in person to be able to talk to them, I think it may have been better or maybe not. But it was definitely worsened, I think, by the fact that our only interaction was limited to online. So that's what I'll say about mental health. But I think mostly everybody's in a better place now, because I think, you know, with us trying to transition into like wave 3, we'll be able to see our like friends and our like other individuals in our community. So I think that's been really nice.
Yeah, thanks so much for kind of bringing out kind of the different elements that you definitely, as a human being, you have to kind of, or you are in the forefront of. One is that you want to assist, you know, your loved ones, and you can't, and at the same time going through burnout yourself and kind of trying to navigate this the best way you can. So, and that feel of kind of helplessness when you're not really able to be there for someone, or, you know, even for yourself because you're, you know, in that situation. So yeah, thanks for sharing that perspective there. Beatrix?
Yeah, so I think when there was like school, my mental health was like pretty okay-ish, because obviously school's just like hard in general, balancing work and then like, you know, all that stuff. But at like the very start of quarantine was like the hardest, because it was this whole different thing, like with online, and then with not seeing people, not being able to like get, you know, help with work and stuff. It was just harder, and my teachers weren't really the best at like online. They were just kind of giving us a bunch of assignments and like just telling like, hey, do these assignments by the end of the week. And I was like, what is happening? But I think now it's a lot better, just because like summer and not having all that work and extra stress piled on, and I'm just like better at coping now for when we go back to school.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. And it's good to hear how different teachers were able to support and not support, because with that also kind of comes training, right? In terms of how am I supposed to kind of support my students when everything is online, and you may not necessarily be tech savvy as well. So it's, you know, a whole new different kind of experiences. So thanks so much for bringing that up. So Fabiola, so I just want to talk a little bit about your organization that you kind of co-founded, Fabulous Addiction and Mental Health Awareness Support Foundation. Can you tell me a little bit about kind of what have you heard? I mean, because the core focus is merely kind of the taboo is mental health, right? And the focus is on, you know, the Black communities, right? So, and what have you heard, I mean, from individuals, young adults, or people just kind of reaching out to you on a personal level, but also kind of individuals reaching out to the organizations? What are some of the things that you've heard, and how have you supported individuals?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, we recently just launched 2 free hours of counseling for individuals in the Black community who need it. So we collaborated with the Red Cross and the Canadian government, and it's a big first step for the foundation. We're still a baby foundation, as I say. And I think on a personal level, like when I talk to my friends or my peers or even my coworkers, it's something that's still stigmatized. Like even just having like that general conversation, like, hey, how's your mental health? They're like, oh, you know, it's kind of like, it's an untalked about subject, and it's sad because some, like in life, I learned is like a lot of spheres. There's your emotional, physical, environmental, and mental spheres that you have to take care of. And so me and my aunt, we were talking, and then we kept applying for grants because what else can we do during quarantine? We can't really go out on the field and continue to spread our message. And then since then, we were able to find a handful of Black professionals who want to give back to their community. And although 2 hours is not enough, it is still a first step. It's a huge first step for our community. And I think it's hard because we don't realize how much it's affecting people's lives. We don't realize that what they've been through and what they're living through right now, especially during a pandemic, we don't know their situations in their households, right? And just offering someone an ear or an arm, just giving them that comfort that they do have someone they can rely on, especially when it concerns mental health, is so important. So I think that's why that we work so hard, especially my aunt. She's working very, very hard to provide these services and to continue making the link in the community, because it takes it takes leaders. And like Caitlin said, like she works so well under pressure, and I relate so much to what she said because I work so well under pressure, and it's a bit scary to say because that's not good, but it's how I present results, and it's how we give the best outcomes. And I think it shouldn't be like that, but until we normalize the conversation and normalize access to free services, especially when it concerns health, we're gonna have to continue doing that work.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I think what really resonated with me is one, you know, also, you know, with Caitlin, when you said, I don't think people know where to go for services, you know, and I don't know if people are waiting, like how long are they waiting to get the support, right? And on your side, it's like, how comfortable are people actually talking about it, right, Lydia? So it's really interesting that the bridge is so massive, but at the same time comes solutions, because everything is kind of unraveling in terms of where the gaps are when it comes to mental health, and how are people supported and how are people not supported, and how can we access these resources. So thanks so much for sharing that. So I want to kind of go back to, I guess, now, the present. 6 months? Yes, 6 months it's been, I think. So Caitlin, I want to kind of ask you, because the first thing you did when you heard like that your social bubble can be expanded, or that you can actually start hanging out with your friends, I mean, obviously through social and physical distancing, but what was kind of the first thing that you did when this announcement happened?
Firstly, I was just kind of surprised because I wasn't really sure when this was going to happen. And then I remember they announced that you can now have a social bubble. And I was like, ooh, what's that? I was like, this is kind of an interesting concept, because I think it's been interesting to see what public health officials have been doing to try to regulate. And more specifically, it's been interesting to see how different countries have also been responding in different ways. So I was thinking like, ooh, this is kind of an interesting concept. And I was like, I wonder how this is going to work. So I definitely looked into it more because I was confused. And I think at first I misunderstood it, because at first I thought, okay, 10 persons in your social bubble means that you can meet with like 10 people, but it was like, no, it turns out that like it has to be like everybody you're regularly in contact with, so it's kind of like literally a bubble. So I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. So I think the first thing I did was like kind of familiarize myself with that and like talk to my parents about it, because I think we were having a conversation because I think they had the same initial understanding as me. So we were all kind of super happy. We were like, yay, this is great. And then we're like, wait, we have to dial it back because we're like, it's not exactly as expansive as we initially thought. So I think we had a conversation about it, about whether or not we wanted to do a social bubble or not, or if we were just happy just staying in our like 4-person household. So we ended up deciding to bubble. So we bubbled with my best friend's family. So then we kind of talked to them about whether they were comfortable with that. We had kind of a long conversation about it because I think their family also had to like talk through it. So they spent a couple weeks to talk through it as well. And then finally we were able to meet up. So that was really nice. So
Yeah,
I think that's pretty much what I did. So I did take advantage of it.
Yeah, I think the one thing that really kind of clicked with me when you said, okay, well, yes, one thing if my parents are okay with it, but the other thing is, are their parents going to be okay with it as well? Which is, it's interesting to kind of look at it that way, because normally you're just like, okay, I'm just going to go hang out with my friends, right? So yeah, so thanks for bringing that up. Elise.
Yeah. The first thing I did, I was happy, obviously, like I can finally see my friends. But the first thing I did, I made plans with my friend, but only with my one friend. But it's because like Caitlin said, like their parents are also like you also have to make sure that their parents are fine with it. So yeah, but her parents were fine with it. So I went to see my one friend, and then yeah, and then I saw more and more friends after that.
Awesome. Beatrix?
Yeah, so I don't really know if we like have a social bubble technically. Like I haven't really been seeing that many people. I've seen like my two like best friends, and we've been biking and stuff because one of my friends lives near this like huge school with like all these bike trails. But I don't really know if I have like a social bubble. Like I haven't seen more than those two people. So I don't know if I'd call it like a 10-person social bubble, because it's just those two that I've like, and not even seen regularly, maybe like once or twice a week. So it hasn't been like a regular thing.
Yeah. How did you feel, I guess, because were you hanging out with them? You weren't able to hang out with them before. So how did you feel soon as you kind of like set this up? You're like, yeah, this is actually going to happen.
Yeah, I didn't really realize that it had happened because I haven't been paying attention to news or anything, because it's just like, a lot when you watch the news. It's just a lot of information all at once that's just being dumped on you. So I haven't really been watching like the COVID news. But yeah, it was just, I kind of called them up and asked if they wanted to hang out, and but me and my one friend, because we're both doing online, we were thinking of having a social bubble with our families to be able to work together online and go over to each other's houses to do online together. But since, we don't even know what class we're in, like we haven't been able to talk about that anymore.
Interesting. Yeah, we're gonna get to that in a little bit. That's interesting. Lydia?
The first thing I did was I went back to work. Fortunately for me, I have a very, very small work team since everybody else works from home. So we're like 3 people at the office. And since I live with 2 people, with 1 person, it's okay for me. So I went back to work being the workaholic that I am. After 4 months of not working, I kind of missed it a lot.
Yeah. Awesome. And I guess it's also you going to see people face to face and not, the online meetings and online conversations too, right?
Exactly. And like, especially when I work a lot with like Zoom and shows, and like we do webinars. So like it's easier to communicate with your boss when he's not mid Zoom call rather than when you're at home.
Very cool. So I'm actually very curious to know, is everyone going back to school in person, or who's going to school in person and who's going to school online?
I'm going back in person 2 days a week.
You're going in person, and then the rest is online?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Caitlin?
Yeah, I'm going back completely entirely online. So
Okay.
I pick only online courses for the fall semester, although in winter semester, I do have a couple labs that are in person.
Okay. Lydia, how about yourself?
All my classes are online for winter and fall. Yeah.
Okay. And was that like the decision that was made by the university, or was that something?
Yeah, so for the fall semester, it was the university's choice. However, I do believe winter term was at our discretion.
Okay. And Beatrix, how about you?
Yeah, so I'm doing all online because it was either all online or all 7 days a week, or sorry, 5 days a week, and I didn't, want to go back every single day. So yeah, I'm doing online.
Interesting. I'm actually very curious to know, I mean, why did you, I guess, make the decision that you made? I know that some of it is that it wasn't up to you. It was, part of the institution decision, but what did you, I guess, what kind of factors kind of came into play in the decisions that you made, whether to kind of attend in person or online? Elise?
Yeah, online school didn't really work for me in March. So I was like, no. And I need to like I am a person that like I need to socialize. So I chose to go back to school because I feel like it was the best option for me.
Yeah. Okay. So it's 2 days on and then 3 days in
Yeah. But we had a choice though. Like I personally chose 2 days a week.
Okay. Yeah. That's a good reason. Beatrix?
So yeah, I think I chose online just because, like, I don't know, I feel like it would be such a different atmosphere than it was last year and in the first couple of months. Like, you can't leave the classroom, you are with the same group of people all day, you're, in a mask for 6 hours, and I just feel like from being at home and from being, here I'm kind of more used to it now than what I was in March and stuff. So I feel like online would be easier than to go back to going. And hopefully it'll be better than it was in March because it's a different school because of the different grade. So hopefully they'll be a little bit better prepared, and also having these like 5 months to prepare for it.
Yeah, and I guess like for you, because you've been home, it's kind of adjusted your kind of mindset to doing things online now. Okay, cool. Okay. Caitlin?
Yeah, so I think fall was kind of decided for us, even though there were some courses I think delivered in person. I was just like, well, if I'm only gonna have a single tutorial in person, then it's not really worth having to go downtown for just a single tutorial out of the entire week. So I think that's why I opted for entirely online in fall. But for the winter, I think it was important that I would be able to still learn the lab skills, like in organic chemistry, for instance. So that was something that was important to me, being able to have those resources rather than doing like simulated labs online. I know it's the same for my sister. My sister's going into grade 11, and for her, she wants to do ceramics, like one of her art classes is ceramics, and she can't do ceramics at home. And also for her, like online learning has been really difficult, so that's why she opted in person. So I think that's why in-person learning is important, to have the resources that the school provides. But other than that, I think online should be okay. I'm not looking forward to it. I do not like online classes, but I just think that's like, you got to do what you got to do.
So the definition of online, I'm sure it kind of varies by school and by institution. So from a university perspective, does online mean that it'll be a live lecture, or does online mean that materials will be given to you online and there won't be that interaction? Or what does that mean, I guess, like from an institutional perspective?
There is both, actually. U of T calls it synchronous and asynchronous delivery. So synchronous means that it is in real time. So you have an actual live lecturer speaking to you. You can like ask questions in the chat box and they'll hopefully respond to you. Like I guess they can ignore you if they want. But then asynchronous means that they'll just provide the resources and you can watch them at any time. So a couple of the courses that I'm taking are asynchronous, which means that I can just watch them any day from Monday to Friday. Whereas the asynchronous lectures I have to attend at the stipulated hour.
Okay. And Lydia, is it the same for you? Is it similar for you as well, or?
Yeah, it's the same thing. So like 3 out of my 5 classes are like off schedule. I only know the word in French, so I'm not even gonna try. But yeah.
Okay. All right. Very cool. So, Elisa, you kind of mentioned this earlier on that your time is going to be split between in person and online. So, just kind of thinking about that. I mean, what are kind of the concerns that you have? Because you earlier on kind of you mentioned that, I don't like online. I do well in person. So
Yeah.
what are some of like the concerns that you have of kind of having a hybrid solution to going back to school for you?
I mean, I guess not having enough material to like pass my like test or exam, but I mean, we're gonna have 2 classes a day and they're gonna be 2 hours and 30 minutes. So I think that will be like more than enough to learn. But I mean, I think that I'll be good. But yeah.
Well, Beatrix, do you have any concerns with kind of going completely online?
I think my main concern is it being the same as it was in like April and June and that whole thing happening again with like, you know, not getting the right resources and teachers not being understanding and not being, you know, and just giving a million assignments without even telling us what they are. And I think just that being that re-happening again.
So that was what happened kind of initially when things transitioned online, is that you were being flooded with all of these assignments and
yeah. And
okay.
we weren't told what they were. We had like no Zoom classes. We had no way of talking to the teachers other than through email. We had no way of being able to be like face to face online and be like, hey, how do I do this?
Interesting. And you'll have new teachers now because you're moving into grade 7. Okay.
Yeah, a different school.
In a different school. Okay. Right. Okay. Okay. Interesting. Lydia and Caitlin, kind of going into kind of the post-secondary education space, any concerns from your end in terms of what you may or may not be facing?
You can
I'll
go.
let Lydia go first.
Okay.
I think one of my biggest concerns is losing motivation. I feel like not being able to physically go and sit down and take notes in lecture hall is going to be one of the hardest adaptations for me. Like, especially in April, I don't know if it was the same for Caitlin, but it was very hard for me to just sit in my room and like try to listen without trying to fall asleep, because we're in an environment where we're so prone to sleeping, eating, and then going, right? So changing that environment and turning it into a workspace was it's a challenge for me. And hopefully I don't lose too much motivation. I should be fine, but just also not having that relationship with the teacher and being able to walk up to him or walk up to your TAs and just be like, hey, like this is my, like what I'm worried about. It's not the same over email.
Yeah. Caitlin, how about you?
I was nodding my head so vigorously because I felt what Lydia was describing. Back in April, I totally agree. I completely lost motivation to stay up to date with the lectures because I just felt like at that point you were listening to lectures, they seemed a little bit boring, they would drone on for a bit, and then you were like, well, I can just get the same value out of the PowerPoint slides. Why am I attending the lectures? So definitely self-regulation and staying focused is a challenge that I hope I'm ready to face. I think also self-regulation in terms of regulating my sleep schedule is a big thing for me. I like to stay up late, which is really bad. Don't do that. And so I sleep in as a result. And even worse is that my earliest course this year is at 11 a.m., which means that I was like, I don't even know if I'm going to ever wake up earlier than 10:30, 11 because I don't have any commitments earlier. So I'm like, I think that's a concern for me because I just don't want to permanently shift my sleep schedule to something that's unsustainable into the future when I have to go into like work or something. And also my well-being. I didn't mention this earlier, but I think I realized how much of our own like mental health and well-being is reliant on socializing with others and being around other people physically. So I just hope that that won't because like I've been fine so far, but I'm just like I haven't had to do a whole semester of online classes, so we're gonna see what happens. So I think that is a concern right now. I don't know what it will proliferate into, but we'll see.
Yeah, that's a really good point that you brought up, is that although things shifted online, it was a very short period of time when things were online, and you don't really have enough time. Well, your initial mindset is like, oh my goodness, I need to like transition everything, even myself, to kind of how am I supposed to navigate everything? But now it's kind of reality, right? So I guess kind of my questions to you, has there been any discussions around having an online community for students with other students, depending on kind of the courses that you're taking, or even in the grades that you're in? Have there been kind of any conversations around that to kind of keep that motivation and having that type of discussion?
I think I'll take a jab at this question.
Sure.
Being a pathobiology student, my department actually has a student union, which is really lucky and fortunate. So what the student union has been doing for us is they've been coordinating like online social events, which I think have been really awesome. Also, the faculty themselves have been super helpful because they've been doing so many like Zoom webinars and Q&A sessions, which were really like, I liked them because they're really casual actually. Like they weren't super formal. It wasn't like this whole PowerPoint presentation or anything. It was literally just like the course coordinators speaking to us directly and letting us just speak back at them directly with questions. So I think that was really nice to be able to get questions out of the way. And they're having like this virtual barbecue where everybody's supposed to like make their own food and come to the Zoom dinner table and eat together. So I'm looking forward to that. So that's coming up in a week and a half or so. So I think these sort of social events are kind of nice. They also like drop in study sessions where you can drop in on a Discord server and just like chat with other people to study. So I think that's really nice that they're providing those supports for students.
Cool. Elise and Beatrix, is there anything like that happening for you in school in terms of, I know Elise, you mentioned Teams, or was it Google Meets for your online conversations, or?
Yeah, the teachers would just like in the beginning of the week or like twice a week, they just clarify like the work we'll be doing that week or any assignments, or if we have any questions they can answer, but that's about it. Yeah.
Okay, so it's not like you also have like a student group to kind of interact during. Okay, interesting. So I know that we're kind of getting close to time, which is pretty awesome. I wanted to ask you this more like a scenario question. We talked about this kind of before in terms of inclusivity and being kind of in kind of the part of those conversations, especially when it comes to how things are affecting the way that you're learning and your experiences as a student. So right now, if you had kind of the opportunity to kind of share your insight or your feedback, or even if you were asked by the institutions that you're attending or the schools that you're attending about what kind of support you would need as an individual to have a successful experience and have a successful year, what would you say? I mean, what would be the kind of some things that would come to your mind? Maybe I'll just kind of, Beatrix, I'll start with you. That's okay?
I honestly don't know what like I personally need. I think just everybody needs obviously more mental health support and stuff to be accessible, and like people were saying at the start, for it to be more destigmatized, because obviously like a lot of people at school don't want to talk to their teachers or whatever about their mental health, because sometimes teachers just like don't even care. They just brush it off as something that's like just not that important. Also, I think just more students would need more financial aid, because like a lot of students rely on schools to provide even just things like pencils and pens, and if you're doing online, you don't have access to those, and if you can't afford them and you don't have the schools providing them because you're not going in, you know, it's like kind of what do those people who need it, what are they supposed to do?
Yeah, thanks so much. That's a great point that you brought in, is the support systems that were put in place before COVID hit and now everything's online. What support systems are going to be refined for individuals who are looking for this aid? So yeah, that was a great point. Thanks so much, Beatrix. Elise?
Sorry, can you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, sure. So if you were asked, just whether, from your school, like, hey, Elise, what would you like to see happen? How can we support you so that you have a successful year and you have a good experience, especially while you're in-person and online, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what would you say? What will be the couple of things that you would say to them?
I mean, I wouldn't necessarily have anything to say because I think my school's doing pretty well. Like they even send email like asking if any student needed like a computer from the school or anything.
Okay.
So I wouldn't like really have anything to say.
Okay, very cool. And like anything from like the perspective of kind of doing in-person to online transition, kind of having that kind of structure every week? Anything that you would need?
No, I think it's good. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. That's actually pretty cool to hear that they're asking students if they need any kind of computers so that they're able to do things online. That's actually pretty awesome. That's awesome. Caitlin.
Yeah, what Beatrix said actually really resonated with me. I think another gap that we might be seeing is also like meal programs that used to be provided by the school. So I don't know how they'd be able to facilitate those, especially with people being at home. But I think I'd be interested in seeing how they could potentially support with that, or maybe having like some sort of like, COVID fund. I know a lot of universities have those where you can apply for like financial support to support your meals, but I don't know if elementary schools and and secondary schools have those. So I think that would be nice. I think by and large, I would say the university does have a lot of academic supports available, and it's actually more about making students more aware of them. Like we have writing centers, we have academic counselors, we have academic advisors, which I think a lot of students don't know about. Like I don't even know about half of them, and I try to look into them to try to find out more. So I think that's nice, but I think maybe setting up those same infrastructures for secondary schools could be really helpful, especially supporting students who are applying to post-secondary, like all the grade 12 students who are going to be applying to university and college this year. I think that's a huge challenge that needs support. Like usually you'll have all these like in-person like sessions where they'll have Q&As, yet they don't have those anymore because you're not going to school. So yeah, I'd say that's what I would hope. And for me personally, I would just hope that my professors are just understanding and compassionate, because they're going through stuff. Their families are obviously struggling. We're struggling, but it just doesn't help when they're really harsh on us, or they're like demanding stuff, or they're just not being understanding. So I feel like that more than anything is what I really hope that my professors will do this semester.
Yeah, that was an excellent point that you brought in, is that the level of empathy from professors or even teachers, really for that matter, is the fact that everyone is essentially on the same boat and we're all trying to navigate this the best we all can, and to show that and not be kind of the typical professor or teacher that has been kind of pre-COVID, and being understanding of different circumstances. And the other point to awareness, absolutely, there's so many things available, but do people really know of its existence, what's actually happening? So yeah, that was great. Those are great points. Thanks so much. Lydia.
I think one thing that I personally find would be very important, and I always mention it, it's the sense of community at the school. Especially in post-secondary, I feel like it's such a big institution that we sometimes forget how many people we are. And now that we're all going online, we won't even notice it as much, but just having that support. And like Caitlin said, there's so many resources on campus that we are not aware about. And I think that now is the perfect time to let students know that, like, you're paying for these, use them, and you have access to them, but also don't stress yourself out. Because if your mental health is not great, you won't perform as well as you want to. And I think also professors should be more understanding and patient, because it's a time of adjustment for everyone. And at work, we always have this thing where every day we tell each other what values we used yesterday. And I always say adaptability. Not everyone is comfortable learning online. E-learning is not for everyone. I've done it in high school, and then I did it online for post-secondary, and it's not the same. And some people crave that human connection in order to embrace and actually learn what they're studying. So yeah, just listen, understanding.
Yeah, that's great. And yeah, thanks for bringing that point up, is that everyone learns differently. And at the same time, with COVID, you also have to make the decisions that's kind of best for you, whether that's kind of health related or, the situation that you're in. But at the same time, adapting to it and understanding it, and providing opportunities for support and aiding that support as well. So awesome. This has been an amazing conversation for me, also kind of learning from you going through grade 7 and grade 10, going to high school and going to post-secondary institutions. And it's really awesome to kind of hear all of your perspectives on a personal level. So I really want to say, thank you so much for being very candid and open and sharing your experiences, your personal experiences, and what you've gone through and what you're still going through. And yeah, I mean, that's like a big kind of applause and pat on the back. And I think honestly, this is really important to bring different perspectives to the table, so that other, students who are, going to grade 7 or, attending high school or going to post-secondary education can relate and say, you know what, it's okay to not be okay with what's happening, and it takes time, and to not also put too much pressure on ourselves at the same time, and to also put ourselves first when it comes to our mental health. So I would like to see if anyone has any questions. I don't see anything in